I didn't have a question this week that I could answer, and so I'm going to kind of go off and do my own thing. But I do want to encourage you, if you have a question that you'd like to wrestle with, or you'd like me to consider, please just send it to that email address there that's over my head, and I'd be happy to do that. This morning I want to talk about something that I think is really important for the ways that we understand the holy texts that we have. We live in a certain context. As people, as American citizens, as United States citizens, we live as citizens of the wealthiest, most powerful nation in the world. There are those who think that that's threatened, and maybe it is. That's neither here nor there for what I want to say. But we tend to, when we go to these texts, to read them from our own perspective and from our own context. We tend to assume that the Bible is talking directly to us in our context, or that it was written, maybe more appropriately, written by people in a similar context to our own. But the scriptures were written almost entirely from the perspective of those who were enslaved, imprisoned, threatened, oppressed, whose lands were occupied, who were exiled and carried off into slavery. This is the context of the scriptures, and you'd be pretty hard pressed to find anything in scripture that wasn't written from that context and that perspective. The people who wrote these texts were not like us. They didn't exist as the dominant culture in the world. They existed as a people who were constantly under threat of annihilation, threat of slavery, threat of death. That's the context in which it was written. And so when we go to the texts and we see these people saying things like God is on our side, it means something different. It means something different when somebody who is powerless says God is on our side and God will defend us, and God will destroy our enemies, than it does when those of us who are in power and have incredible resources and the most powerful military in the world, when we say God is on our side and God will defend us and God will destroy our enemies. Those two things, we're not saying the same thing. And so we have to be really careful in the ways that we take these texts and the way that we use these texts, because we have to understand that these texts are not written from the same context and the same perspective that many of us read them from. And so as we deal with these texts and we look at them and we try to apply them and understand how to use them, it's very, very important that we don't simply take them and drop them into our own world and assume that we can interpret them just based on our own lived experience. That's not how this works. As a matter of fact, all too often, that ends up being the most destructive ways in which Scripture gets used. You see it in the way that the church deals with the LGBTQ community, the way women are often treated in the church, the way we deal with those who are aliens and orphans. There are just incredible differences, and we have to always be sensitive to those, or we run the risk of being the Babylons. We run the risk of being the pharaohs. We run the risk of being the Roman emperors and the Pilates that are the ones working against God, because they use the holy as justification for their oppression and destruction of other people. And I am sure that you, like me, do not want to be a part of that.